Morning. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. It's the summer solstice, June 21st. We're the longest day of the year. It's going to feel even longer because we're still under mask mandates, but maybe in 10 days, those are going to be gone. We'll see. There's some politicians working their very hardest to fight allowing us those freedoms, but that might pass. So I've got a good guest coming on in a little while here. Drew Barnes, independent MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat's going to come on. We'll talk about how the session finished up in the provincial government, what they've got to look forward to this fall, what he's going to do through the summer. Jason Kenney, I'm sure, has issued quite a sigh of relief at the end of the session. It's been a long, agonizing 6 months for him and his party as well, along with everybody. It's just people are miserable for different reasons. Well, I'll get started, though, in mentioning our sponsors, because we are an independent news outlet and we rely on sponsors and subscribers like you to keep rolling. We don't take any government dollars. And as I like to say before, the government's not offering us any. We're not really much of a friend of the state. But a lot of sponsors do step up and help us along and keep us broadcasting and giving news that other mainstream outlets won't cover off for you. So the CCFR, they've been sponsoring these shows. That's the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. And nobody works as hard as the CCFR to fight for your ability to own and use firearms. That use portion is important. I mean, some of them say, oh, you can own it, but we just want to have it disabled and hanging on your wall and then welded to a piece of metal or something. No, you want to be able to use it, target shooting, hunting, whatever. It's up to you as long as you're safely using it, not violating other people's rights. That's lost on a lot of progressive-minded souls. Hey, if it's not harming you, leave it alone. And don't worry, a gun in itself will not harm you. But the CCFR is fighting for your ability to do that and to carry on doing that. It is your right. So their site is firearmsrights.ca. So go there, firearmsrights.ca, and click why join us, and they'll give all the reasons on why to join them and what they're doing to stand up for your rights. Because again, we've got to stand up for ourselves. Plus, we've got groups like this that are helping us stand up for ourselves. This is their job, their role. Get out there, support them so they can support you. It's important. Getting on to other groups. I love these guys, the Resistance Coffee Company. I mean, this is where we can use the private market and capitalism to make a political point while supporting small local businesses, while providing good coffee to people. I just see win everywhere you go. These guys were kind of formed in response to the woke political correctness that's being rammed down your throat everywhere you turn. You go to a place, you buy towels or you buy soaps, and you find out that business took some of your money and gave it to Greenpeace or gave it to PETA or some other goofy group that you really wanted no part of supporting, yet you indirectly supported them. You buy soap and then you feel dirty afterwards. It kind of defeats the purpose. Well, Resistance Coffee Company, they only support causes that stand up for your rights, not the ones that are trying to take away from them. So 10% of every purchase you get from them goes towards causes that are fighting for constitutional freedoms in Canada. For example, they give money to the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, with John Carpay and some of the others that have been fighting so hard for people's rights under the charter and in the courts. So the Resistance Coffee Company, counter to the woke narrative, will give a portion of your money to causes that you will appreciate, causes that help you, not that shut you down or put you out of work or restrict your freedoms. So get out there, and they've got some real catchy names. I mentioned it on the show before. One of them is like Defund the CBC, which is, of course, a name that's near and dear to my heart. Liberal Tears, lots of neat names for the coffees, and it's just good coffee. So if you go to resistancecoffee.com, that's where I'll repeat it, resistancecoffee.com, and when you buy, you put in a promo code Western Standard, all one word, and you'll get 10% off your first order. So head on down there, put in Western Standard, get that first order, you get that 10% off, and another 10% is going to go towards a good cause, and you end up with a bunch of coffee. I mean, this is just winning all around. So please, support our sponsors so they can keep supporting us, and it's the great alternative media cycle of life here. Hi, Mandy. Thanks for coming on, and good to see you. What's this? I'm sorry. I just like to watch the comments. It is a live show, and comments are welcome, though I do pause as we go. So Damien's saying something about Fauci partnering with Moderna. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that one. Starting with some COVID news, though, something is happening today in Calgary and a number of city councils around Alberta is they're discussing whether or not to get rid of their bylaws for mask mandates. And Jason Kenney's made it clear the UCP numbers are dramatically dropping. Every number is dropping. Deaths are dropping. ICU admissions are dropping. R values, all the numbers they loved using to lock you down, they're all going down into the toilet, which is fantastic. You know, the infections are going down. There's no more reason to maintain these restrictions on us, and those restrictions are all coming off on July 1st. We're all looking forward to it. Unfortunately, many crazed control freak municipal politicians do not want to let these controls go at all. They made their own, even if it's outside of their jurisdiction, actually. You know, health is supposed to be a provincial mandate anyways, but still, you know, you get people like Nenshi and Iveson and others. I guess Lethbridge has been pretty bad, and Innisfail. They want to jump in and get control, whether it's their jurisdiction or not. So they put in their own mask bylaws. And not to be outdone by the federal government or provincial government, they put their mask bylaws all the way to the end of 2021. These things don't expire until after Christmas. So if they had their initial way, you would be masked all the way through summer. Now they are getting some pressure, finally, because the rest of the province is going to be unmasked. There'll be no more provincial mandate for it. So there really is no good excuse or reason to maintain those bylaws. All the same, they are going, I believe Calgary City Council is discussing it today. It's actually going before them. City administration, and why do we give a shit what city administration says? You know, we're supposed to be telling them what to do. They're not a health authority, but their recommendation, and I tell you, Nenshi and his little gang bows to those city administration bureaucrats. And they want the mask bylaw in Calgary to stay all the way till the end of July, at least. The other option they have is to get rid of the mask mandate when the province drops theirs, which would make sense. We'll see if common sense prevails in City Hall, and it's a rare thing when it does. Maybe some of them are going to realize, though, that keeping people masked up all summer when it's no longer part of the law and the infections are a thing in the past might be stupid. And some of these guys are facing elections this fall. Nenshi, I got a feeling he's facing one, but it'll probably be federal. He really seems to be positioning himself. You know, he's in the news. No matter where you turn, you see Nenshi's face, beady bug eyes looking at you, and he's going on about something that's way outside of city's jurisdiction. I mean, that's not too terribly new, but I mean, he's going anywhere and everywhere. I mean, he's just surfacing all over. It reeks of campaigning is what it does. We know he's not running for mayor because he knew he probably wouldn't win it. So he's moved on to a federal campaign. Some people think he might be going to the Senate. That could be possible. I mean, I'll give my theory. I think the Senate's his final backstop. He'll run. He's cut a deal for the Liberals. He's going to run for MP this fall. If he loses, Trudeau will put him in the Senate. If he wins, he'll be an MP and he'll be in cabinet. Because, unfortunately, Trudeau is probably going to win a majority this fall. So either way, Nenshi's got nothing to lose. He does have stuff to lose, but he's not so concerned about city issues. So he'll push his mask mandate, if only to give the middle finger to Premier Jason Kenney, because Kenney has put a lot of political capital into the reopening. You know, he said this is the best summer ever. He's hoping that Albertans will breathe such a sigh of relief with the mandates and the restrictions ending that they'll finally start warming to the provincial government again, and the UCP might get a bit of bounce in the polls, and they can move on with other things in this next 2 years and hope to get reelected. Now, progressives like Nenshi and Iveson do not want Kenney to recover whatsoever. So they are looking at this mask mandate, I think, as a way to keep Albertans miserable. They don't want us to have the best summer ever. They want Albertans to remember it and be miserable. Another lost summer, a second lost summer. And one way to do it is to keep these mask mandates running. And I tell you, masks are miserable. You know, some people say, so what? It's no big deal. Well, then go ahead, wear it. Wear it until you die of old age. I don't care, but I don't want to wear it. It's dehumanizing. I don't hear very well. Here's a side issue. When I'm actually talking to people, long story as to why my hearing is not that good. I'm too stubborn for hearing aids, but I find reading lips helps a little bit while I'm at it to catch what they're saying. Well, masks really hinder that. Other aspects, we've all been living through it. We know it. You can't see somebody smiling. You can't tell if they're being a little jovial or sarcastic or if they're angry with you. There's only so much you can read in the eyes. You need to see their face. You know, having these masks on is not a minor inconvenience. As I said, it's dehumanizing. It's a control thing. If it really was, and that's debatable and so on, saving lives, fine. But now that it's done, it's done. Let the masks come off. If you want to wear one, knock yourself out, fill your boots. But I'm sick of wearing one. Now, if those idiots in City Hall, and they are idiots, there's a lot of them, if they keep that mask mandate right till the end of July, well, for one, businesses in Okotoks, Cochrane, Chestermere, Cross Iron Mills, Airdrie, they are going to be thrilled because they're going to get the people who are sick to death of wearing the masks. And as Rose was pointing out, yeah, your glasses fog up when you wear a mask. Again, it's not a minor thing. It's really annoying and troublesome. So for one, and then they've beat on Calgary businesses badly enough with high parking rates, high taxes, just general disrespect for Calgary businesses from the city council and the mayor. One other area where they're going to mess with Calgary businesses, small and large, is if they keep this mask mandate, because maybe they don't believe it, but it's true. People will leave the city to do their shopping. They will go to the Sutina Costco. They'll go to the Canadian Tire in Cochrane. That's an awesome Canadian Tire, by the way. It's huge. They'll go to restaurants and bars down in, say, Prentice, for example. There's a great one down there I know of called the Water's Edge. Okotoks, lots of others. And I don't own that anymore, by the way. It wasn't self-serving in that sense. Then, you can sit on a patio, you can have a drink. You don't have to look at a server with a mask covering their face. You don't have to go through the stupid motions of, I finished my drink, I have to go to the washroom. Okay, I'll stand up, put on my mask. No, maybe I got to put the mask on before I stand up. Walk across the room, go to the washroom, come back, take your mask off again, consume your beverages or food. Come on, guys, it's arbitrary, it's ridiculous, it's not protecting anybody. And most everybody knows this. So again, if the boobs in City Hall decide to keep that mask mandate all the way till the end of July, well, then people are going to be going outside of the city with their businesses. And those service industry businesses that are already crippled, that are already in terrible condition, that are already hurting, are going to hurt all that much more. It's hard enough for these Calgary restaurants and bars or even retailers to get business as it is to try and get through. I mean, the wage subsidies are going to come to an end eventually. The rent subsidies are going to come to an end. And they got to deal with the fact that they'll be the only cities in Alberta that make all their customers and staff mask themselves while everybody else doesn't have to. Great. Just one more thing. That you wonder why the downtown is hollow. You wonder why there's a boom in suburban and even farther outside bedroom community purchases. It's not just businesses, fleeing Nenshi and the controls, lunatics on city councils. It's citizens. They don't want to live under that. So either way, I wanted to get on about that because these discussions are today in City Hall in Calgary. I don't know when it is in Edmonton. I don't know when it is in Lethbridge, but you got to speak up and you got to tell these imbeciles that's enough. Back off. The laws are coming down. Don't you guys be holdouts. It's not within your jurisdiction. And if they don't do that, please show up at this fall's election and fire these guys. Part of the reason they do what they do is because we let them get away with it. We got the worst amount of apathy in the world, it seems, when it comes to municipal elections. 20, 30% turnouts have been known in Calgary elections in the past and around the province. I mean, this is government that's closest to you. These guys have a great deal of influence and impact on you, and they take a lot of your taxes. They impact businesses in a heavy way, yet you don't bother yourself to get out and fire them when they're being idiots. So no wonder they sit in there for 20 years at a time. Diane Colley-Urquhart, I mean, God, I think she was just getting in there after I got out of school. She's still there. Ray Jones finally left for health reasons. I hope he's okay. But he was there for decades. Dale Hodges, these names you don't hear of. Because the ones in City Hall, by the way, who learned how to stay there for decades, nobody moves, nobody gets hurt. Most of the city, Ray Jones was there for decades. No, most of the city didn't know who Ray Jones was. Why? Because he didn't do anything. He stayed away from the camera. And you know what? People just apathetically put them back in again over and over and over again. Dale Hodges, same thing. Get up this time. Yeah, Drew Farrell, as somebody pointing out, Paul, 6 terms, I think, in Ward 7. Though I can't compare Drew with some of the others in some senses. There's only in a tiny little way. I don't agree with pretty much anything Drew does. But I can respect one aspect. She didn't sit there like a mushroom doing nothing for decades to try and stay in there. She did actually stand up for things and speak up. Almost always the wrong things. But at least she had some principles to push with them. She didn't sit there like a mushroom like some of them, just turn it into a job. Watch Ward Sutherland. He wants to die in there of old age. Get up, fire these guys this fall. We have to. Drew Farrell is finally stepping aside. And yeah, only because she wanted to. She's a crazed socialist, but she was unfireable. People wouldn't get up and do anything about it. So that's what we got. We got a big one coming this fall. There's going to be a new mayor no matter what. There's going to be at least 5 new city council members. That's enough to change these guys around. And part of it, too, is watching votes like today. They like it to slide under the radar. They want you not to know what they're up to. That's why there's no Hansard in City Hall, no gazettes. You can't see what they've actually done. And they rely on that. They rely on your apathy. So watch the votes of your city councils this month, everybody. Keep an eye on them. Make a check mark next to your councillor if they voted to get rid of the ridiculous mask bylaw, or if they voted to keep it, or on a number of the other issues they talk about, because you keep giving them a pass. We keep giving them a pass. These guys get elected and reelected because we aren't paying enough attention to them. They would behave so much better if we would just get up and fire them every now and then. You want to keep them accountable, make them fear for their jobs a little bit. City Hall appointments or elections shouldn't be lifetime appointments to office, to a cushy job, yet that's what it turns into for a lot of them. So we've got an opportunity to change that this year. Okay, so getting on to accountability and outspoken politicians, I'll get on to our guest for today, and that would be independent MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat, Drew Barnes is coming on here. There we go. How you doing today, Drew?
Oh, Cory, I'm great. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, good. I got a nice head of steam on yelling at municipal politicians for a little while, so I'm all ready to speak with you now, though I'm not worked up with you at this point. So it keeps me motivated, though.
Yeah, hey, down here in Medicine Hat, there's 10 new people who have already put their names in. So people are looking for change once again. Let's hopefully we'll get some.
Well, that's good. And I might as well segue into kind of a political notion. It's been a problem. And it's a problem in partisan systems, and it's a problem in municipal systems without parties, and it's groupthink, where everybody's got to think the same way, or we will ostracize the outliers, the ones who raise their hands and ask questions, or the ones who don't march in step with the rest. And that's an issue you're quite familiar with these days, I could safely say.
Yeah, I sure am. When I was ejected from the UCP caucus about a month ago, of course, Premier Kenney had said publicly many times he welcomed public debate and public disagreement and public discourse. There was times when I agreed with him, especially when we had a regional approach to COVID and mask wearing and that kind of thing. But anyway, it is what it is now, and I have the opportunity to speak more direct for my constituents, for Albertans that believe in freedom and prosperity, families and communities. And I'm relishing the opportunity. We just finished in the legislature late Wednesday night. Fellow independent Todd Lowen and I have a great relationship. We've hired some great staff people. We're very much ready to work for Albertans and listen, lead, and learn.
Yeah, well, some of it, you've mentioned that before in a sense. It's empowering in a way when you're an independent. You truly can just speak for your constituents in your local area. But it is harder to get the voice out when you've lost that party platform to stand upon. So what have you been doing to kind of try and bypass that handicap?
Well, a few things. First of all, social media. So whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or LinkedIn, anybody that wants to reach out to me with an idea or concern, please do. Secondly, iPods or podcasts rather like this, as much media as possible, and just walking around Medicine Hat and even Edmonton, talking to people, hearing what their thoughts are. This summer is going to be a busy time out and about. With the equalization referendum coming up, I believe it's critically important that Albertans send a strong message to Ottawa that we have to end this unfair game, this game where resources are being stripped out of here in spite of the risks we take, how environmentally good we are, and all we do to the rest of Canada. And I'm part of the reason that I'm going to be doing a big around Alberta and a lot of communications is I'm concerned that right now Premier Kenney's unpopularity, the lack of trust for Premier Kenney has made it so Albertans, he's not on the ballot this fall, but we need to focus on the fact, like Quebec, we need some changes in the Constitution. We need some changes in our relationship with Ottawa. We've seen just in the last 2 weeks, Quebec has asked for nationhood within a nation on the Quebec part of the Constitution. They've asked for French only. I see on the weekend they're only going to allow Quebec artists in music in Quebec government buildings. They're not scared to push for what's best for Quebec families and communities. Albertans are there now, and it's time to organize that, and it's time to make Ottawa and make the rest of Canada aware that, in spite of Premier Kenney's unpopularity, that we want more prosperity for our companies, our communities, and our families.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, and that's why I wanted to bring you on today. Because I mean, there's clearly been some sparks and so on, and you're in a different seat in the House with the legislature, but you're not taking it on as a role of blind opposition. You're going to oppose every initiative that comes out of the UCP or from Jason Kenney. And something that's very important, you see the value of the equalization referendum this fall, and that hazard that people might use it as a de facto way to show discontent with Premier Kenney. And we got to ask Albertans to differentiate between the two. I mean, even if it was a UCP initiative, it's still a worthwhile one, and we can express our discontent with the government in other ways.
Yeah, exactly, Cory. Hopefully this is the start of more Albertans realizing that nothing moves unless it's pushed. It is time for us to like Quebec does, to push our existing arrangement with Ottawa. It's going to be hard when $25 billion a year leaves Alberta for the rest of Canada. The number is $670 billion since 1960. The changes will at first be hard, I believe, but secondly, part of this is just to do it. We haven't pushed for a long time. I think of the Alberta agenda items from over 20 years ago. Our own pension plan, our own police force, our own tax collection, even greater control over our immigration, so we can pinpoint better where workers are needed and that kind of thing. Hasn't been worked on for over 20 years since Stephen Harper and others made it higher profile. And let's take what's good, what the UCP puts forward, and let's go from there. But of course, the 3 or 4 things that I'm most interested in is more limited government, so spending can be less and taxes can be less, so individuals, families, and communities can be stronger, especially with some local decision making, those are things that I'll be watching for.
Oh, well, it's good to have somebody watching for that. I mean, part of an imbalance I think we've had in the legislature, and it's one of the problems with a two-party system, is it's naturally builds a polarization. I mean, there's going to be this side and there's that side. So anytime somebody's getting up in question period to question the government in power, it's always coming, or had been always coming, from the left end of the spectrum, which is their role, and that's what they're there to do. But if the government's always only going to get pressure from one side, then if they're going to have any movement, they're only going to move in one direction. And get people come up and question for small government, for reduced government, for smaller taxes. We need those voices, and you and Todd are providing them right now, and that's appreciated. Getting back to the Fair Deal panel, I was on with Franco Terrazzano last Friday. It was the 1-year anniversary of the release of it. And aside from the equalization referendum, unfortunately, everything else within it seems to be stalled right now. Is there movement on anything like the pension plan, the police force, or any of those initiatives yet?
Just in the typical Premier Kenney way, studies, 2 or 3 million here to study this, to study that, rather than taking the bull by the horns and getting the job done. Collecting our own taxes is a good place to start. Quebec is the only province in Canada right now that collects the personal share of the provincial income tax. Both Alberta and Quebec collect the provincial share of the corporate tax. And Quebec, 2 years ago now, was pushing to collect Ottawa's share, and amazingly enough, Andrew Scheer agreed, and Justin Trudeau didn't. So we have an ally in Quebec when it comes to that. And I haven't seen any of the work with other provinces to make that start happen. The police force, by any March 31st, we have to give 2 years notice so we can set up our own provincial police force and replace the RCMP, which of course will make little difference in the metros, which have their own police forces, but make a huge difference in the quality of service in rural Alberta, where police policing and victims and all those things are terrible, and they're a problem. Something has to be done. Things like even more control over immigration and where we need workers and those kind of things. We as we come out of the COVID lockdown and restrictions, it's going to be essential to get the economy going in the right way. But no, in our pension plan too. It's clear that if Alberta had its own pension plan, CPP or Alberta pension plan in this case, of course, like Quebec does, the benefits to Albertans would be over $3 billion a year. So we could have employees and employers pay a little bit less, or we could have our retirees, our seniors, have substantially more pensions, even if it was a second pension, an Alberta one and a Canada one, if you have some past work with Canada. And Cory, as you know, when with this bout of inflation in the last 3 months, it's made it even that much tougher for people on fixed incomes. It always was tough anyway. And for me, this is a risk worth looking at when seniors can't afford to retire on what they have now anyway. Let's look at making Alberta better for everybody, particularly the youth and the seniors on fixed incomes. But yeah, is one of the last questions I had in question period on Wednesday was, okay, Premier Kenney, Fair Deal panel had all these other things out for our own police force. I think we also have to look at our own constitution so we can enhance resource movement. We can enhance the government needs to stay a certain size and taxes a certain limit, and all that's been pushed to the wayside. So like I say, the Alberta agenda items, commonly called the firewall letter, over 20 years ago, and none of that's been done. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, well, and something I've said more and more lately is rather than getting mad at Quebec, we should start learning from them. I mean, they have unapologetically stood up for themselves for decades, and it's worked. I mean, the world revolves around Quebec as far as Ottawa is concerned. And it's time to stop that one Canadian trait, I think, that is kind of a handicap of ours, is our trait to constantly apologize. I mean, all of the things we asked for back with the original firewall letter, none of them were unprecedented. Every one of them, some other province was already doing. I mean, there already was the Ontario Police Force. There's already Quebec pension plan. There's already Quebec collecting their own taxes. Yet when we ask for it, we're suddenly jerks and we go and cower away and apologize for having asked in the first place. It's time to dig our heels in.
Yeah, exactly. Again, nothing moves unless it's pushed. It's more and more Albertans are asking for it. I think because of, first of all, the lack of resource movement when we didn't get the pipelines, and now corporate welfare, government involved in every aspect of pipelines and the oil business. It's ridiculous and it's not efficient. And Cory, I think back to 2012 Wild Rose when we elected 17 people. I had the opportunity in 2011 and 2012 to knock on thousands of doors, and there was a real outcry for Cypress Medicine Hatters and all Albertans then for democratic reform, like citizens initiated referendums, like recall, and especially things like more of a fair deal, Alberta agenda items. We seem to, maybe have gotten distracted in the last 6 or 7 years on that, but I believe that the desire from Albertans is there strongly again. When I'm grateful to have been on the Fair Deal panel, and when we heard from thousands of Albertans, and up to 80% said that they are insisting and wanting a fair deal with Ottawa. And Cory, a lot of it was taking some real risk and some real effort, opening the Constitution so we can actually have a Senate that works, opening the Constitution so we can have reform in the number of seats that we have on the Supreme Court. Right now we just have one, and we share that with Saskatchewan and Manitoba on an alternative basis, where Ontario and Quebec are always guaranteed 3 each. So political things that go to the courts end up being swayed that way, of course. And same with the number of seats we have. The number of times that hardworking Albertans went to the mic and said, "This is ridiculous. The results of an election are over before we even vote. It was so unfair." And of course, I think now we're seeing that with some of the policies coming out of Erin O'Toole and the Conservative Party of Canada. It looks like they're prepared to write off the 34 Alberta seats for 47 or something they may get in the Toronto area. it's mind-boggling. But again, Cory, I'm so grateful that everywhere I go now, Albertans are telling me that, yeah, enough's enough. They've seen their families, their friends, and their communities hurt in so many ways and not be able to prosper. From smaller communities not being, and smaller rural communities not being able to get the linear taxation that oil companies paid for years and years. But of course, they've had some trouble. To the number of young people that have had long periods of layoffs, or the one I like to talk about because it's accurate, is a guy with a welding truck used to put himself out for $85 an hour. Now he's lucky if he's getting 45 or 50, and it's been a lot of changes in our local economy that people are saying is enough. And of course, we've also seen that in spite of the fact that the Alberta economy has been hurting, the fact that this year Travis Taves and Jason Kenney are running a $20+ billion deficit, we're still probably a net contributor to Ottawa, paying into it. And when we went back to Ottawa, cap in hand, asking for a cap on the fiscal stabilization, that was turned down again, of course, or a small win. It wasn't near the win that we wanted. And so, yeah, Albertans are ready to push back, and it's political, and I know we'll get the job done.
Yeah, well, I hope enough people are saying enough is enough. And I just recently reread Preston Manning's book, The New Canada, from back in '92. And what was frustrating in reading that is you could just change the dates and republish that book today, and nothing has changed. This was when he was pushing the Reform Party. Triple E was the big thing back then. We thought that an equal elected and effective Senate could change the regional disparity. I mean, Canada is one of the third biggest land masses in the world, and we've got one of the least decentralized governments of them all. It's ridiculous that we don't account for regional differences. But we've been trying for almost 30 years on this file and haven't gotten anywhere. We do have Senate elections this fall, but unfortunately they're only limited to federal candidates, which is kind of odd. I'm looking forward to hopefully voting for a senator candidate, but I'm not sure if I'm going to have many options this time around. Is that exercise, still worthwhile, or?
Well, yeah, thanks for that, Cory. Yeah, that's a good way to frame it, because it's only a small part of all the changes we need done, but it is at least some control for Albertans, for Alberta voters, as to who goes in there. And what I think we've had 4 of our elected people appointed over the years, it's something like that. So there's a good chance for it. I saw in the media about a month ago that the Canadian Senate had just set a record over 25 years since it had overturned a law from the House of Commons, and that's the longest in the Westminster system that an upper body had ever gone without changing the law. So if that doesn't look like pure patronage, and it makes you wonder. So I would encourage everybody to get out and vote against equalization continuing. It's time for Alberta to get a fair deal. It's time for Alberta, to help the rest of Canada prosper. And that's what will happen. And again, it's ridiculous that hydroelectricity revenues don't count, but oil and gas ones do. There's so much that needs to be changed. And there's many reasons. But what I would say when it comes to voting for your senator-elect, whatever party they're with, I'm going to drill down and find out who's interested in reform, who, once they get there, will work towards those triple E's, equal, effective, and elected. And if I can get strong commitments, out of the people running for that, yeah, that's where my support will go. And and again, more of a independent, more of an autonomous Canadian Confederation, where Alberta can be free and prosperous, with our people here, the great risk takers we have, the great hard workers, and as good as we are in so many ways, Alberta should be the freest, most prosperous place in North America.
Yeah, so getting farther along, I mean, let's say we have some great Senate elections and a strong turnout, and we've definitely determined, who we want to represent us in the Senate, and say we have a very strong turnout also saying we want to see equalization taken out of the Constitution. If and when, say, a Trudeau majority tells us to take our notions and stuff them somewhere, where do our options land then?
Well, yeah, thanks, Cory. Well, I hopefully it won't even get to that. Hopefully we will continue and always push for a stronger Alberta. But the next provincial election is between March 1st and May 31st, 2023. That's less than 2 years away. There's a lot of political parties and people storming out there, and storming is a word. They're organizing, they're talking to people. So let's look for politicians and people that are going to stand up for Alberta being the freest and most prosperous place. The Fair Deal panel and the thousands of Albertans that spoke at it and emailed me otherwise showed that the vast majority of us are insisting on a better deal with Ottawa. And so let's put provincial and Alberta members of parliament in place that will stand up for that. And so let's keep watching and helping out, of course, to see what ideas develop and what party develops. Let's see what where the UCP goes in terms of one of the big concerns, of course, now is the vast majority of Albertans I talk to feel that Jason Kenney and the UCP have not met expectations in so many things, but particularly when it comes to standing up for Alberta versus Ottawa or Alberta in trying to get us a fairer deal. So we'll have to see what develops, but hopefully, one of the things that I said in the Fair Deal panel that I still believe in is Ottawa has to have a date knowing there's consequences for not giving us a fair deal. And the consequences, I think, should be an independence referendum. And let's pick a date. At times, I thought it should be the same date as the provincial election between March and May of 2023, where Albertans can go and say, yeah, Ottawa has tried to give us a fair deal, done this, and this, and is in the right way. So let's see what happens. Or no, they haven't. It's time for Alberta to pursue its independence. There has to be consequences. Nothing's changed in over 100 years. Nothing's changed in 20 years. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, and just along those lines, outside of the party aspect, I guess you and Todd Lowen, one amendment I believe you tried to get through when it came to whether it was recall or the referenda, or perhaps both, was getting the bar lowered to enable for citizens to be able to initiate those actions. Those amendments didn't pass, though, I believe, did they? Or?
No, they didn't pass at all. We did on one of them. We did have a couple of UCP MLA support us. I believe it was on citizen initiative referendum. But to me, it's again, Albertans are crying out for more involvement. Albertans are crying out for more accountability. And Premier Kenney came along and set the bar. First of all, with recall, it's exactly the same as British Columbia. In over 20 years in British Columbia, it's never been used. It's never gone its full process because the bar is so high. And he also put in a confirmation election. There's like three big steps for recall in Alberta. First of all, a certain percentage of electoral people have to sign. That's 40% of electoral voters. So somewhere in my case, 16,000 people in Cypress Medicine would have to sign saying that they want a recall election. Then 6 months later, there's a vote to confirm that they want a recall. And if that happens, then 6 months after that, there's a by-election. BC doesn't have that middle step of the confirmation or the vote to have a vote. And so we tried to take that out. We tried to reduce the 40% lower. The NDP tried that as well, but it was turned down. And in citizen initiative referendums in Switzerland, 8.5 million people, 50,000 people can put on a policy or legislative change. If you get 50,000 signatures out of 8.5 million people, it has to happen. Here at the number that the UCP and Premier Kenney came up with was for legislative and policy changes, 10% of the election list. So if that's 3 million Albertans, that's 300,000. And of course, there's about 4.4 million Albertans. If it's a constitutional change, it's double that. It's 600,000. Jurisdictions that have those two thresholds never meet it. And I think it has to be done in 60 days as well. I tried to extend that to 120 days, but that was turned down. I tried to make it so it's more workable. the interesting argument that a lot of the UCP MLAs that didn't support it had is they wanted a continuous process. They wanted the law to be put in, even though it's basically unachievable, and be worked at over time. Well, the way I look at it, Cory, we're taught when we're young and we're helping dad or we're helping a friend, you measure twice and you cut once. This seems to be a law of measuring once and cutting several times until it's done. And but it also depends on whose government. As you said, to open up our talk this morning, in our Westminster system, who's ever in power has tremendous power. They, with the majority, they do what they want. And so that will make Albertans subject to the whims of that. But Cory, that's one more reason for Albertans to get involved. When a politician knocks on your door, when it's time to send an email, put in there that you want citizen initiative and recall that's got a lower threshold, a more achievable threshold in terms of the length of time to gather the signatures and the number of signatures needed. It's again, one of my concerns that when Albertans tell me they want to be more involved and they want to hold me and all the politicians more accountable, let's give them the chance to.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. And, just sticking to those core principles, well, you first got into politics with, sometimes being stubborn, hopefully will pay off in the long run. I know you've been asked before, and then we'll see before I let you go. I mean, you're going into the summer as an independent. You still got a couple of years ahead of you. I know you haven't pointed any party directions yet, and you may not even by election time, but are you taking any considerations on a party front at this time?
Well, thanks for that. I'm certainly listening. I'm certainly talking to Albertans. And, it's interesting. Up until 4 or 5 months ago, and of course I was ejected from the UCP caucus a month ago, probably 70% of my constituents were saying, try to stay within the UCP, try to work within the UCP. Now, wherever I go, people are saying they think less and less. They are saying they believe the UCP is not the answer. Certainly, the desire for Premier Kenney to resign and change there is huge. So less and less are saying that. I'm grateful that parties like the Wild Rose Independence Party, even the Alberta Advantage Party. Saskatchewan had a party called the Buffalo Party in last election that just started about 6 months before the election and finished second in 5 constituencies. So there's, you said it earlier. It's important, I think, to have a voice on the conservative right. The libertarian voice that a lot of us share, but also that very, very strong fiscal conservative voice. The fact that, Tax Freedom Day, I think the Fraser Institute now has it at July 24th or something, or I'm sorry, June 24th. Like so you work half the time for the government and then half the time for your family, and the desire for more choice, more opportunity, for more free enterprise, and so these voices are out there, and I'm going to spend the summer in Cypress Medicine Hat and going around Alberta as much as I can. And I'd very, very much like to hear from all Albertans and the direction and how we make Alberta free and prosperous.
Well, great. Well, thanks for joining me today. Maybe I'll run across you on one of those summer events. It's been heating up to a nice one. Hopefully we're all healthy and unmasked and we can socialize and plot and plan and improve our political lot in life this year.
Absolutely.
I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon or having you on again. It's always good just to get somebody straight shooting and speaking from our legislature for us.
Cory Morgan, thank you very much. All the best. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Drew. Talk to you later. So, yeah, it's always good to get Drew on. Like I said, he doesn't beat around the bush with things. And there's a few questions, out there. Back to where I was ranting before Drew got on with Jenny saying, Albertans need to want and insist we be and do better. And that's it. It's up to us. I mean, we've got flaws in our democracy, but it is a democratic system. If we really get off our butts and do something about it, we can. I mean, we think of true authoritarian states. You can't. You can't do with anything shy of a revolution. We do have peaceful tools at our disposal we're just too lazy to utilize. And one of which is firing politicians or demanding better. One of the things Drew was pushing for, again, was with the legislation, which really ticked me off out of the UCP, unfortunately, was that, yeah, they gave us recall and referendum legislation, but they set the bar so high, it is completely impossible. It's just totally impossible to get those signatures in time in order to invoke a referendum or a recall. And I mean, some people don't understand, like these, when you've done official petitioning, I see Craig Chandler watching there. Boy, he's done a whole heck of a lot of campaigning. Even going out, say, for a provincial election, I think you need 30 or 40 signatures on your nomination papers to run. That is a day's work quite often. I mean, petitioning on an official form means you go in person to that person. You've got to get their physical signature. There's not internet signatures. You got to get their address. You got to get their phone number. It's got to be matched up against a voters list later. And not everybody wants to sign, and you've got to get them in person. Like, it is a whole lot of work. So some people say, oh, just getting a couple 100,000 signatures is easy. No, not even close. It's a massive endeavor. And the Kenney government darn well knows that. They've campaigned before too. So when they set that bar there, that was their way of saying, we're going to give them the legislation, but we're going to make sure they never, ever actually use it. And that I found to be insulting. I would have felt better if they had not even given us the legislation, and just be honest about it and just say, we don't want to empower you with the ability to bring issues out in a referendum or the power to fire us midterm. That's what the reality is. So, yeah, and Craig there had asked Drew if Kenney was gone, if he'd come back to caucus. It's a good question, but I got this the last time Drew was on kind of as well in that. It's just that I don't want to corner Drew on those things because he said over and over he's kind of keeping all doors open at this time. I mean, it's only been a month since he's been ejected. He's been able to speak openly as an independent, but he also understands there's a lot of handicaps in being an independent. You don't get as much voice, you don't get as much budget in the legislature and things like that with not being with a party. Others are wondering whether he'll join the Wilders Independence Party. As Drew had kind of said there, though, he's not ruling anything out either. So kind of let him do his job and hit the ground running this summer and see what he comes up with. A great one from Elaine. I like seeing that. Somebody's Elaine McNeil saying, I'm enjoying my Resistance coffee right now, and it's yummy. That's good. Again, thank you for supporting our sponsors. It's really important to us. It's important to those small businesses that are doing a great job out there for everybody. And then we got Patricia Leinecker, probably mispronouncing there, but putting out again, an election should be based on a resume. When us little people lie on our resume, we don't live up to it. We get fired. It's called accountability, hired on skill and honesty. So, I mean, yeah, and when a campaign is coming as a first-time person coming in, they really have to get out to the people and tell them what they're going to do, why they should be chosen, why they should be entrusted to get into those positions. And then they get in and they turn around and they don't do what they promised. But the problem is we don't fire them. What are we teaching them if we put them back in every time they lie to us? And we got to fire them. People say, well, the next guy will be just to say, okay, fire that one too. Fire a third one if you have to. Eventually, some of them are going to figure it out and think, you know what, if I want to be in my job for more than 4 years, maybe I should actually do it. But it's up to us. And the same goes for the Senate and the equalization referendums coming up this fall. You know, and I've talked about this and ranted about it. I really feel it's important for us to get out and take part in these things. You know, get out and strongly register our votes one way or another on those. Make a showing. I know some people feel that it's running against a brick wall. Some people feel that we got to go straight to independence. Hey, I'm there. Okay, I was pushing for independence, 20 years ago, but the voters aren't there yet. And the best way to put it with Albertans, we're reluctant separatists. There's so many who want to do every possible other measure first. It's fine. Okay, let's do it then, though. Let's quit messing around. Let's try it. Let's really put full bore on the Senate reform. Really hit equalization hard. Really start putting those changes in place that get our one foot out the door, provincial police force, things like that. And if the central government in central Canada responds negatively to us, well, then we will start getting those people who really want, you know what, they'll say, that's it. Let's go. Let's pull the pin. We're done. We got to get out of Confederation. Maybe we can rewrite a deal after that, because I think that's where we're going to go. I think that's where we have to go. The only question is, how long is it going to take, and how many times have we got to fail before we get there? But we can't find out that without getting out there and trying on those fronts. And as Jenny also said, yeah, on every level of government. And that's why I was hitting it at the municipal. I'd actually gotten a private message while Drew was talking from a council member in Calgary. They're discussing the mass bylaw as we speak right now. I won't distract myself by going and looking and seeing how it's going, but maybe they'll actually vote and just join the province. You know, if they're showing some wisdom, they'll do so. And the political class no longer has any fear of the electorate from the Albertan. Politicians should wake up every morning hoping they don't anger the people they represent. Absolutely. And we need decent mechanisms, realistic ones, in order to hold them accountable, and we don't have them. And we got a bait and switch from the UCP when it came to recall a referenda. And like I said, that really ticked me off. And Drew and Todd tried to fix it and bring that bar. You see, what it was pretty subtle. Most of these things, like if you want to register a political party, I can't remember what the number is, but you need a certain percentage of the amount of people who voted in the last election on a petition over a period of, I believe it's 90 days. And it's thousands of signatures. And that's why we only still really have only a handful of parties, because it's a lot of work. It's tough to get that many in that time period. And what Kenny set the laws for recall and referenda on, though, were based on the amount of people registered to vote, not who came out to vote. So that sets the bar to a huge level. Now, think about it. If you live in a constituency that, say, had a 40% voter turnout, and you're supposed to get 40% of them on a petition of the registered electors. I mean, you need basically everybody who voted to actually sign the petition. It's not going to happen. And again, the Kenny government knew that. So that was kind of insulting. It takes away our measures. So what do? We got to start firing some of them. There's no other way to deal with this. And eventually we got to move towards independence. Getting on to the federal front, we're moving on to the end of the parliamentary session. You want to rant a bit about that. C10, I don't know. That's the free speech infringing, internet controlling bill from the Minister of Heritage. It's just been a gong show. I would have thought the Liberals had enough sense of self-preservation to just get rid of this dog by now. They've just stumbled on every step. Their own speaker, I mean, it was nice and refreshing to see one parliamentary check and balance kind of work. A Liberal speaker looked at a whole pile of amendments that the Liberals had shoved onto that bill as they mashed it through committee and into Parliament, and said, no, that's not going to happen, and got rid of all of those amendments. Now, the bill is still there. It's still odious. It just doesn't quite have those amendments, but the Liberals just will not give up. So now they've shoved it on to Senate, and some senators are digging in their heels. Hopefully the Senate has loads of theoretical power. They just rarely use it, and they can be stacked. But I'm just hoping that rotten bill dies before the end of the session. And this session will probably be the last federal session we're going to see in this parliament, this government, in a sense. Something that happened in the last week, MPs who have already declared that they're not going to run again in the next election got up during this session and made their farewell speeches. So they don't anticipate that they're going to be sitting in the parliament again. There's going to be a fall election. And I tell you, from the looks of O'Toole, it's not going to be very good for us. We'll see. I mean, O'Toole's going to give us a carbon tax just like the Liberals. So as an Albertan, I'm going to have to think really long and hard about how I'm going to vote this fall. But as it is, either way, with his capitulation and throwing Alberta under the bus, it doesn't matter because his support numbers are crap in central Canada where he needs to win anyway. So all he did was tick us off and won no points. So, I mean, I fear we're going to get a Trudeau majority, but I don't know. I'm mixed with the fear. Maybe that'll be the catalyst to finally get Westerners to get up and stand up for themselves. We can't change playing within this ballpark, so let's change the park. Let's change the venue. Let's change the rules. We got a lot to look forward to as that goes. So they've given their goodbye speeches. They're ramming through a couple of other things here. It looks like, they're trying for that net zero commitment in emissions by 2050. That will severely damage us, of course. It's gross political virtue signaling at the highest of levels at terrible expense. And of course, as always, Central Canada wants to do it at Western Canada's expense, and we'll pay the price. That one will probably go through. Looks like a conversion therapy ban they're all fighting over in there. That's another hot button virtue signaling issue. The reality is conversion therapy is disgusting. It's people thinking that you can pray the gay away. If I can just go to the right shrink and embrace the right religion. Do you think, I mean, if you're straight and you're listening, or whatever your orientation is, do you really think that any amount of therapy is going to change your preferences? I mean, you can really screw yourself up trying. I guarantee you that. You can add to a lot of confusion and stress. Either way, leave Parliament out of it. There's very few places offering that. If it's a grown person who really wants to go to some organization and try and take on such therapy, well, whatever, you screw yourself up. Unfortunately, we'll have to pay to try and fix you later. But, it's an odious concept, but is it somewhere that we need our federal parliament tying themselves in knots over either? I don't know. I think it's more of a political trap because it brings people into anybody who looks like they're opposing the liberal ban on it is supporting the conversion therapy in itself, and then they can play some political gotcha with it. It's a stink bomb. Hopefully it gets through and we just get on to some more reasonable things. There's word that Saskatchewan's looking to get out of their restrictions, getting back to provincial stuff in July. It looks like Scott Moe is ready to move on that. Their infections are down. Let's leave on, I guess, some optimistic notes. Canada Day is coming up. That's the day. That's the day we get back to normal in Alberta, outside of any of the municipalities that are maintaining controls on us. Here's something like, I'm somebody who's sour on Confederation. I want to see a new deal. I want to see a referendum. I want to see the West split off. As Ted Byfield used to refer to it in the past, if we're looking at the long game, I'd like to see reconfederation. That was his term. We can sign back into another deal, whether it's EU style or whatever. I mean, Confederation is just a bunch of agreements. It's just a contract, and that contract is the Constitution, and it stinks. It's dated. It doesn't account for the regional differences. It doesn't account for the regional changes or the growth, and nobody's willing to change that Constitution. So you know what? Let's tear this engine down to its roots and rebuild it. And the only way to do that is to have a constitutional crisis, and that's with a province either voting to go or at least being on the very brink of it. Because Charlottetown Beach Lake didn't make it through. You need something big to give the catalyst to make that real, true systemic change. Either way, along those lines, Canada Day, coming July 1st, the celebration of the beginning of Confederation. I'm fine with that. Even as an Albertan first now, as a person who wants to see Confederation torn down and changed, I still respect the history. I still respect the fact that this nation was formed and became one of the most prosperous, free nations in the entire world. And I'm sick of the self-loathing assholes who think we should be apologizing for attitudes from 150 years ago. Those guys built what we are enjoying today. Sure, they were intolerant. That's what was happening 150 years ago. Sure, they had some views that are unacceptable today. Well, let's celebrate that we grew out of those views. But to try and cancel Canada Day is pure idiocy. It's junk, it's crap, it's revisionism, and we've got virtue signaling politicians, again, usually on the municipal front, because we keep re-electing these extremist ding-dongs into those positions. So St. Albert's canceling their fireworks. Victoria, of course, land of the loopy left, got rid of their Canada Day celebrations. Penticton has followed suit. Has it changed anything? Did it undo the damage of the residential schools? Did it stop the internment of the Chinese or the deportations of the Chinese in the 20s or the internment of the Japanese in the 40s? No. So, and I'm not ashamed of the nation. I don't like our system. I think it's broken. I think we need to work to fix it. But I'm not ashamed of what got us here. It was still better than a lot of the blood, gore, and misery that a lot of other nations had to do to get into the modern world. They all look at any nation's history from 150 years ago. It wasn't pretty. So, I mean, when it's not to look and say we celebrate Canada Day or to look at a statue of John A. Macdonald doesn't mean we embrace everything they did and love everything they did. It's just that we recognize how historically significant those people were and how it led to where we are today. And I still, if we were in a truly independent Alberta 10 years from now, completely gone from Confederation, I still wouldn't be offended by a John A. Macdonald statue that was somewhere. It would still be a part of Alberta's history, even then. But we've gone into this world of madness, thinking somehow we're all responsible for the sins of our fathers. What an ugly concept. We're getting better. There's always room to improve. But this ridiculousness and this pushback against our own history is counterproductive. It's identity politics, gone to the extreme and gone wild. And again, I'll say it, I've said it before and I'll say it again. That's another reason I want independence. If you really want to get rid of racism in Canada, if you really do, and I tell you what, the virtue signaling left really doesn't. Because if they really did, they would oppose the Indian Act. They would want it repealed, and they would want the reserve system to come to an end. So you know what? Whenever you listen to one of those jackasses talking about systemic racism in Canada, tell them they have no place to speak until they call for the complete repealing of the Indian Act. Get rid of it, because it's a purely racial document. It's pure race-based policy. It's ugly, it's wrong. And get rid of the reserve system, which is racial apartheid. That's exactly what it is. It's racial apartheid by definition. So unless you're going to actually oppose those two things, then you're full of crap when you're claiming you oppose racism. You're lying. You're selective. You can't be selective if you oppose racism. You can't say, I oppose this racism, but not that racism. We've got to oppose it all if we're going to get rid of it. Not entrenching and actually dividing further with this ridiculousness. You know, this identity politics. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. Well, I'm here and I'm now. And I'm going to deal with tomorrow and today. I'll learn from yesterday. I'm not going to apologize for it. Either way, that's enough ranting for today. The weather looks great. It's going to be nice and hot out tomorrow. Let's hope when I get back online, we'll have had some mask mandates ripped out by municipal governments. If not, maybe on Friday, I'll start listing all the businesses around Calgary and perhaps around Edmonton that'll be happy to offer mask-free service so customers can enjoy themselves in comfort and smile at each other or scowl at each other or whatever their preferences may be. Happy Monday to you too, Jenny, and thanks for tuning in. And thank all the rest of you for tuning in. It was a good show. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. And of course, one other bunch that I do have to thank again is our sponsors. And by the way, I should thank the people who subscribe to the Western Standard. You know, we need those subscriptions. They are critical. Get on there, sign up. You get some great content, some great articles, great columns. Sign up, subscribe. It gives us that stability to keep paying people to write good stuff for us. And again, be sure to visit our sponsors. You know, these guys are helping you out as well. The CCFR, these guys, nobody's working harder for gun owners than the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights. These guys right now are suing the federal government on behalf of gun owners. They're suing them, and they're doing it for you. So, go there, go to firearmsrights.ca and click why join. And they'll give you more reasoning as to why, they need your help, why you should join them, and what they can do for you. And again, as was pointed out by one of the commenters, the Resistance Coffee Company, she's gotten hers. Mine should be in any moment now. We've ordered a whole bunch of it. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be sure to drink some on the show down the road and just show how good it is. It better be good. I'm sure everybody says it's great. But again, these guys aren't doing that woke political correctness. They're not ramming it down your throat like so many other businesses. They're going to give 10% of your purchase to good causes that are fighting for the constitutional freedoms of Canadians. 10% of everything you put in there. So, it's worthwhile right there. And then if you go to resistancecoffee.com to make your order, they'll deliver anywhere in Western Canada. You order over a certain number, it's free delivery. Actually, any part of Canada, Western or Eastern, they'll deliver to. And use the promo code Western Standard, all one word, and you get 10% off that first order. So, 10% goes towards a good cause. 10% comes off of your first order. 20% of the money you spent is all going to a great direction. Plus, these guys are sponsoring us. Plus, you're going to get good coffee. It's just a perfect win. So be sure to support them, guys. Thank you all for tuning in this week. Nathan's going to be on, Nathan Gita, with Mountain Standard tomorrow at 10 o'clock. On Wednesday, I'll be back with The Pipeline, probably with Dave and Derek. And then Friday for another episode of this show. And I'll be talking to Linda Slobodian on that one. So thanks again, and we will see you then.